What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Brett Browman of Khosla Ventures. You can check him out at khoslaventures.com. And Brett, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. I was thinking, Khosla Ventures, I was talking to my business partner, John Corcoran, who's in San Francisco area. He's in Tiburon. And he's like, Khosla Ventures is epic. So you better do a good job, Jeremy. I'm like, no worries. And just to give you an idea, I'm like, what other episodes were cool that people who are interested in Khosla Ventures, like we're talking about Khosla Ventures did early bets on OpenAI, Stripe, Square, DoorDash. Some past episodes I did with the co-founder of Zapier. That was an interesting one. So we're talking like SaaS, Wade Foster. We did one with Pipedrive. Pipedrive, I think when I interviewed them, Brett, I think they were on 10,000 customers. Now I think they're over 100,000. So they've grown quite a bit. And Jotform is another one. I think founder talked about growing to over 25 million users. So just some interesting journeys and stories, and today's going to be the same, so people can check those out. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that in a few ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production. We also get people on podcasts. Like Jeremy, I don't want to do all the work in the podcast, even though I think it's amazing. I just want to go on shows and like, cool. Well, let's connect you with some great shows. Number 3 is we're an easy button for our company's gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind for clients, partners, prospects, simple and easy and affordable, even for staff. So all you do is give us a list of people. We will keep in touch by sending them sweet treats in the mail over a period of years even. So, Brett, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free for companies so they can build amazing relationships. And for me, I found no better way over the past 15 years to profile the people and companies I admire and send them delicious treats in the mail. So if you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm super excited to introduce Brett Browman. He's a growth operating partner at Khosla Ventures. Khosla Ventures was founded by Vinod Khosla, founder of Sun Microsystems, and they are an $18 billion venture firm, as I mentioned, behind bets such as OpenAI, Stripe, Square, and DoorDash. And Brett previously held the same role at Andreessen Horowitz and was the first growth hire at companies both Square and Opendoor. And at Khosla Ventures, he partners with startups to scale marketing and growth from the ground up. And big shout out to Josh Payne at CoFrame. People can check out CoFrame for introducing us. So Brett, thanks for joining me.
Very excited to be here. Thank you, Jeremy.
So just talk about Khosla Ventures and what you do. As you're doing that, I'm going to pull up the site so we can poke around.
Awesome. So yeah, our role, we're a multi-stage venture fund. So we invest all the way from seed and idea all the way up to very late stage. Like we just invested in, led the round in ClickHouse, which is a very late stage AI focused company. And I help companies across all spectrums of life cycle. So again, from your idea all the way up to you're trying to grow it to like, this is like, we're trying to scale and we want to build a team. And I help with all aspects of growth, marketing, go-to-market, acquiring customers and scaling the business.
You're rolling up your sleeves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The operating partners, a lot of them are sort of later career stage. They're more wanting to do advisory, sit on boards. That's sort of like the traditional role of an operating partner. We take a much more hands-on role. Like I get in the trenches, like almost like a fractional growth leader, like actually doing work with companies and actually driving to outcomes.
I'm going to pull this up too, Brett. Is this ClickHouse?
Yes.
Yeah. So what does ClickHouse do? This is interesting.
Yeah, so they are an open source database that is used by basically replacing, SQL or other databases that you have in the background, and then they build products on top of
Hmm.
that. It's a
Very
large,
technical.
yeah, large like enterprise.
I'm looking at some of their ClickHouse is trusted by Spotify, Lyft, HubSpot, huge companies here.
Yeah, they're akin to like a Databricks, call it, which I think people know super well too.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking on the page here. If anyone's listening to audio, the portfolio page. I mean, we have consumer and retail, enterprise, fintech, frontier, sustainability, digital health, medtech, therapeutics. There's a bunch here, and we'll go kind of dip into each of these categories at some point. But my curiosity for you, Brez, you've been in a lot of different companies, and so I'm wondering what your methodology looks like when you first come in. What are some of the things you're looking at to help them grow? I don't know if you want to take an example, but what do you do first?
Yeah. So, the analogy I love to use is it's like a ER doctor triaging a patient. They come in, we have seen countless cases similar to them beforehand, and through pattern recognition and my own experience, you can pretty quickly figure out what the diagnosis is and then what the prescription is, like what the company should be doing. Um, Given that we run the full stage of companies, like what that company needs or what their like acute problem is around growth and marketing is usually very different. There's a very early stage, like almost seed stage, I would call it, AI focused company that I'm working with now called Highlight that makes a context-aware AI assistant. So it carries context across everything you do on the computer, and then you can interact with the chat bot instead of going to ChatGPT and sort of pasting these things and explaining to ChatGPT what you're doing. For them, it's like full go-to-market. So how do we scale this thing both
Right here.
organically, pay through paid acquisition like Google Ads? How do we hire and help them build a team around this? Like I'm very hands-on and in the weeds with this. The thing that I've found that is most interesting about this job is how important it is and how difficult it can be to build relationships with the teams in a way that lets you be impactful. When you're a consultant, the company is bought into working with you. They're paying you, and so they want output and they want to hear your input. Technically, we sit on most of these companies' boards, and like I could go tattle on the company to the investor if they're not listening to me, but that burns bridges, and that's not a way to build relationships. And so I have to come into companies where the CEO and the founder is exceptionally excited by what we can offer. It's like, well, you can help grow this thing like that. Who's going to turn that down? But the day to day happens usually 1 to 2 levels below that with the actual like execution members on the team. And those people are often threatened by me. They see me coming in and like I'm going to audit what they're doing and maybe, tattle on them if things aren't going well. And the reality is like sometimes that is what I'm going to be doing. And building trust in a way that lets me influence them and be a partner with them is like one of the hardest parts of this job. And I do that through the ethos I have in my head is like no task, I'm above no task, meaning like the most menial of tasks, especially to start. Like if I need to go into your Google Ads account and like help you set up like some conversion tracking or like some very rudimentary, like basic thing that I did 15 years ago, starting my career, like I will absolutely do that. And it is through those, like I am here to support you in any way that I can. And I will show that through action that you can build those relationships with people and over time influence them and have a real impact on the outcome of the company.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple key things here, and I think this applies to any leader, right? Especially when someone new comes in, whether it's internal or external, the guard is going to be up a little bit, right? It's just a survival instinct. And so I'm curious, what have you learned from like a leadership perspective, like gaining the rapport and coming in because like your mentality is there, like I'm just here to help, I'm a partner, but conveying that in a short period of time when you also want to have impactful results with the team. What do you
Yeah.
do from like a leadership and I don't know what you call it, rapport perspective when you're going in fresh? Because every company you go in, it's a similar scenario.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think great leaders do is they help elevate the people that they lead and help, their talents shine through and help them get recognition and credit for when they do a good job or when those talents get to shine through. And so a lot of my work, especially with more of the execution focused people that are closer to the work, is empowering them and helping them appear, competent and good to the rest of the company. And a lot of the people I work with, they just want to learn. Like they're very eager for leadership guidance. And if I can help teach them things and like teach them how to fish, and then they can show the company and leadership that they know how to fish because of working with me, like that engenders a ton of trust. And that's like one of the things I try to do most is not take credit for these things, help elevate the people that I'm working with.
I want to talk about something I know that is near and dear to your heart, which is marketing channels and growth. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about a number of channels, but I do want to start because even when I was doing research, Brett, what I love is you also geek out on direct response and actually direct mail.
Yeah.
Okay. But I want to start going back to Square days. Okay. Where you cut your teeth on digital marketing and talk about some of the channels that worked there and what you did at Square.
Yeah, definitely. So at Square, I came in, I joined there when there were about 40 people. We were processing in payments like less than $1 million a day. Like it was a very small company, just the white credit card reader that plugs in the phone that was made for, Florida's dog walkers and that type. Um, and so I was tasked with running all online marketing, and this was
Just to give
2000.
people context, right? I think Square had, I don't know, you quote me, do they have over like 11, 10,000 staff now or something like that? Is
Yeah,
that accurate?
they're huge. I mean,
Okay.
it's a
So you're within 40 people, now they're over 10,000.
yeah, I mean it's a
Yeah.
30 billion. I don't know what the market cap is today, but it's a very large public company now, with millions of merchants using them for payment processing, and then Cash App, also the consumer app, competes with Venmo is huge too, and that was launched when I was there. Um, but so I came in essentially to run growth, and this was 2011 when like the Facebook ad platform, like I remember they had just introduced like gender and location targeting. Like this was like extremely early days of all of these ad platforms that are like household names now. And so started building those things up. And what I find, one of the biggest challenges that I find companies facing that I work with is not understanding their ICP, so their ideal customer profile, and like not having a real concrete understanding of who they're selling to, what differentiates them, why should someone care, and what pain points do I solve? And for Square, we had such an exceptionally clear understanding of that. It was, again, the taxi driver, the florist, the dog walker, the trunk show salesman, the people that were close to commerce and just couldn't accept credit cards as part of their transacting. They were mostly cash based, but we had a very good understanding of who that customer was. And so then it was just, okay, how do we find the channels where these people are? Meta at the time, or Facebook at the time, Google search, like all of the traditional channels that you would build up is what we ended up building up, including direct mail, as you mentioned. But it started with that understanding of who the customer was and what they cared about.
It's key, especially if you're going to be spending a lot of money targeting someone, you have to know what you're targeting. Because I was talking to someone earlier today, Brett, and I was asking, who's your ideal client, right? and were saying, oh, it's over someone, whatever, someone who's over 5 million. I'm like, that's not really, that's like one small target, but it's not like a pain point, right? When you're
Right.
talking, it's someone who takes cash and can't accept credit. I mean, there's certain pain points involved. And so I kind of dug a little bit deeper, but at that point, it becomes, obviously obvious that the person doesn't really know, they haven't really niched down far enough to see like
Yeah.
who do they best serve.
Totally, totally. And like, there's a company, everybody knows Quora. They make a chatbot called Poe, which is like an aggregator of chatbots. So like ChatGPT, Claude, image models you can interact with through Poe. And when I was at Andreessen, I was working with them on growth. And, first question, like, who is this target at? Like, who do we want to acquire here? And the answer was like AI enthusiasts. And it's like, that is not a category, and that's not like a customer, that's not a pain point that people have. And so we had to go many layers deeper into like students was a very big use case who want to use different models because different models are better at different like research tasks. Graphic designers is one that want to use different image models. So like having to go down like 10 layers deeper into like real customer personas with real pain points and then creating campaigns and ads that actually speak to them. Like that's what unlocked growth for them when I worked with them.
Yeah. So is that how, I mean, I was going to ask you, like, how do you navigate someone through the niche? It sounds like basically take who are your best success stories, case studies, and really dig into all of the attributes of that persona and then speak directly to that persona.
Yeah, yeah, we have at Khosla, there's another operating partner that I work with, Ryan Scott, who CMO at Etsy. He's been a CMO for like 20 years. We have a framework that he's brought, but it's a widely used framework around positioning of defining who your audience is, but it's a one sentence thing. It's like who is the audience, what's the pain point, and how do we solve it differently than others? And there's frameworks for how you sort of lay all this out and get yourself to a point that you can start investing in growth. It's fairly simple, but again, lots of people don't do it, and they just think growth will come.
You've mentioned, I want to geek out on some AI tools in a second because you spit them out like they're all on the top of your head. We talked about CoFrame, we talked about ClickHouse, we talked about Highlight, AI.com. So I do want to get into that, but you mentioned Ryan Scott, and I'm curious, who are some of the people you've learned from at Khosla and maybe some of the lessons you've learned there?
Yeah. Keith Raboy, he's a managing director here. He hired me at Square. He was the COO at Square when I joined. He was at Slide, a social gaming company before that. And he's a prolific angel investor. He's been at Khosla. He's up toward the higher up, but Keith,
Oh, right
he's
here.
been a
Yeah.
mentor for like 15 years, and he, early investor in YouTube, Yelp, like you name it, and he's been in it. He led our investment in Ramp, which is one of the largest companies in our portfolio. But Keith is exceptional at like cutting through the noise and like he's very metrics driven, getting to like what matters. And especially early on at Square, like I still think some of the best dashboards and internal reporting that I've ever seen in a company. And that was on TV screens all across the office. There were 5 boxes I remember that showed number of customers acquired, volume of payments going through, like the most important 5 things for the business to look at. And they were all over. And so everybody knew how we were doing and what the goalposts were, and get orienting people around metrics like that and KPIs in like a very public way like that is super impactful. And that's all around this ethos of cutting through the noise and getting to the questions that matter. One of the things like, Vinod Khosla and an ethos at Khosla is what are the most important questions? Like when we evaluate an investment, the investment partners, the template that we have to write is like, what are the top 5 questions? And it's trying to cut through the noise. Like, what are the most important things for us to be thinking about, asking, and focusing on? And that is something that I bring to companies that I work with. Like Ryan Scott has a great phrase. It's focus on the vital few versus the worthwhile many. And it is the vital few things that you should be laser focused on versus all of the noise in the background. And it's something that Keith taught me early on in my career too.
Talk about culture for a second. You've been a part of a lot of organizations. I get a sense of the culture at Coast a little bit when you just look at some of the about pages, right? And it says on Vinode's, 2 times rejected from Stanford's University MBA program. Like there's a sense of humor here. 50 plus years married, a child to life. So talk about the culture and what you've learned. We can talk about Khosla culture there, and then some of the other ones, like Square.
Yeah, definitely. I think the culture, the part of culture at Khosla that I enjoy the most, and it's what I how I try to be a leader and how I think that really high functioning people can be led and thrive when they're led, and that is giving people autonomy and freedom and giving them the space in the room to like do their craft and setting goalposts, being very clear about like what the desired outcome is. But I will define, we're at A, like I will define for you what Z is. How you get from A to Z is like your prerogative. And that is something that Khosla, like we are very self-directed. Like I have full autonomy over my time. I know what companies matter to the firm, but I can spend my time pretty much wherever I want to. And nobody tells me like what I should be doing. At Square, that was very similar. There were very blurred lines between teams and not in a way that created, like fighting over fiefdoms or territoriality, but it was like, we're going to give people the freedom to run and have the best people doing the best job that they can in the place that they are most functionally relevant. And that sort of like empowerment and autonomy is something that I think like high functioning and really good people thrive on.
It makes me think, Brett, of Daniel Pink's book Drive, where he talks a lot about, what motivates people, and he talks a lot about autonomy in that book. I'm curious, are there any favorite business books that you have that you look to throughout the years? And while you think about that, I just want to point out this is funny. I pulled up Brett's page here. 7. Right? 7 continents snowboarded on. That's cool. And then
Yeah.
you won a Lego building championship also.
Yes.
So that's fun.
I'm
Favorite
I
model to scale to build in. I'm not sure. Maybe that one's too technical for me, but
it's
what
a
is that?
size model. I build lots of, like military model, like
Oh,
small models, like that
oh,
is a
cool.
scale of model
Oh,
to
interesting.
which is sort of like, tangentially related to my interest in building Legos and building things in general. I have three
Have you
3D
seen, did you
printers.
watch the Lego Masters reality show?
Yeah, of course,
Oh,
it's a
that
great
was
show.
cool. Oh,
It's a
yeah.
great show.
Um,
Uh,
So, favorite books, and I do want to talk about this quote too. I don't know if that relates to a book or anything like that, but find the best people who disagree with you.
yeah, yeah. I think it's not entirely like business, but anything by Nassim Taleb, who wrote
Black Swan, I
Ruled by
think.
Randomness, Black Swan, like that talks about understanding how randomness and how data and statistics and probability impact business, life, finance, like all aspects of the world. I love everything that he's written, and all of his books are fantastic.
And so talk about that quote for a second. Find the best people who disagree with you.
Yeah. So we encourage what they say is like, spirited debate. Like you you need to leave ego at the door and you need to speak your mind in a way that is like direct and truthful to you. And that can be disagreeing with you. And there's no hard feelings. Like it is my opinion. It's not my opinion versus yours. It's like my own opinion and you can have your own opinion. And if you don't stifle people in that way, you can have like tremendous outcomes. Like consensus building within an organization is usually fraught with like terrible outcomes as people, design by consensus is never great. And having contrarian viewpoints, I think, is very healthy within an organization.
So tools. You mentioned a few. What are some of the favorite tools? I'll pull up the site, obviously, your portfolio site, because I'm sure that, I mean, the ones you believe in is the ones that you put time, energy, and resources behind. But
Yeah.
some of your favorite AI tools out there, we mentioned CoFrame,
Yeah.
ClickHouse, Highlight
Yeah. I
AI.
mean,
What are some others?
Fireflies.ai, it's an AI note taker. I'm sure everybody has heard of that. There's lots of AI note takers out there. I think that they make like a very interesting differentiated product. The team is amazing. I mean, that's honestly one of the things, not to go on a tangent, but that I've recognized most acutely in working with all these founders and CEOs. It makes complete sense that the team matters, obviously, like that's intuitive sense. But when you actually see it within companies and see how phenomenal teams lead to phenomenal outcomes and mediocre teams, subsequent mediocre outcomes. Fireflies is a phenomenal team. Ramp, who I mentioned before, has a phenomenal team. But like the gel, like I get early Square vibes when I work with the Ramp team, and I think the early Square team was phenomenal. There were phenomenal people at
This
OpenDoor.
is Ramp here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Fireflies just has an incredible team. And there are lots of like earlier stage AI companies that we've invested in. Recraft.ai is one. It's a tool for designers to make essentially better assets than say like an ideogram, which is kind of like just text to image, but this is actual like graphic design and image design. Recraft.ai, I believe. Yeah,
Here
we
it
have
is right here.
yeah, exactly. So it's image generation, but actually for like real designers.
This is
There,
cool. Look at this. Oh my God.
yeah. Uh, one that's very cool that I work with is called Profound. Tryprofound.com. It's there's a whole shift happening with the internet. Originally was organized by search engines, right? Google, Bing,
Is it
etc.
industry reports? Is that?
Tryprofound.com
Oh,
would be
try profound. I got you.
Tryprofound. So, the information organization layer of the internet was search engines. We're now moving to LLMs are organizing this information, and that's where we go and seek them out. And so the
Right
old
here.
world, yeah, the old world of SEO, like search engine optimization, how do you optimize and get yourself ranked on these tools, these search tools, is now turning into, we haven't really coined a term here. Some people are saying GEO, like generative engine optimization, LLMO, LLM
Are
optimization.
they trying to just make something stick and see
Yeah,
whatever? It's
there's
not
lots of,
SEO, it's GEO. It's not
right.
SEO, it's
There's
LL.
competing terms that
Yeah,
I
exactly.
hear, but it's
LLMEO does not roll off the tongue. I'll tell
no,
you
no,
that. That's
no,
not going to stick.
no. I like GEO, but I hear it referred many different ways. But Profound is helping companies solve that challenge of how you actually get yourself surfaced into where a lot of these searches are happening. And like even within Google, like Google is doing AI summaries, which are above the traditional search results. And so figuring out how to get yourself discovered and ranked in these generative engines
Totally.
is a huge need for companies.
I
And
mean, this is a conversation on the dinner table. I was just at a dinner. I had Desmond Clark on my podcast. He was in the NFL. He was on the Chicago Bears for many years, and he started a logistics company. And he came in and we brought together like 20 entrepreneurs in the room. And this was a major piece of that conversation, which is how do I get discovered on these platforms? And so people can check out Profound or tryprofound.com. We're looking at it if you're listening to the audio, all the sites that Brett's talking about, we're pulling up. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people going to it after this.
yeah, I mean
Any
it's
other? Yeah, go ahead.
I just the last thing on the geo. I was at a dinner with about 20 people purely focused on this GEO, we'll call it. And we had the head of organic from Andreessen, who I used to work with, a girl who runs that at Uber, a bunch of people who are like very well connected and plugged into this world. And there honestly isn't a ton of consensus around like what the actual unlock is that gets you ranked in LLMs. For sure, there are like marginal tools or ways to do this, but the consensus at that dinner was like a lot of the traditional things that you do within SEO are applicable here. The thing that I think stood out the most is the importance of Reddit. And, Reddit year over year, traffic to Reddit in the US is up like 50%. Like it's exploding in usage. And LLMs like authoritative content and like consensus. And so curating your organic social presence on Reddit, whether it's like moderating thing, like trying to have your brand like talked about in a positive light or just talked about it all on Reddit is like one of the hacks or one of the ways that you can like influence ranking in these LLMs that is sort of non-intuitive. But other than that, the consensus was kind of keep doing generally what you do for SEO and it will evolve.
Yeah, I've heard, I mean, I don't know what's true or not, but like that doing video and, on
Yes.
YouTube helps
Like,
a lot, which is similar to SEO, right? I mean, getting
yeah.
indexed and the transcripts and words and content's getting indexed as well. So it's funny. Maybe I should respond, Brett, to some, I'm getting a bunch of over the past year emails from people from Reddit wanting me to advertise. So maybe I should
Hmm.
respond to them. I'm like, oh, Reddit? I don't know. But from what you're saying, maybe I should take a closer look at it.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually advised the Reddit team on some of that when I was at Andreessen. So yeah, I know that work.
Um, so marketing channels, right? So we talked about early on with Square. I mean, you were, heads down exploring early on some of these channels. When you go in, what are some of the marketing channels you're considering for a company?
Yeah. You know, most of the companies that I work with that are like on the earlier stage, online marketing is where they go and where they start because it's the easiest. They know it the best. Usually, like they've worked around the industry or have some familiarity with that. And it usually is still the case that like, especially Google search is probably a primary place you should start. If it's a consumer company, obviously Meta, LinkedIn works really well for B2B. But what we find works really well in it paired in concert with that is like offline media. So CTV, connected TV, the tracking on that is phenomenal these days, or is much better than old linear TV used to be. Podcasts obviously are very effective. Direct mail is another offline channel that works. Outdoor can work really well. The what makes these channels work ultimately and why people bias so much towards online marketing is measurement. So online marketing is easy to measure. Like the platforms will tell you biased often. This person clicked and like this many people signed up or whatever it is that you're trying to track. And they can easily track all of that. And because of that measurability, a lot of people bias towards that. A billboard, it's harder to get tracking like that. But there are ways to measure all these offline channels through things like media mix modeling, which is a regression tool that takes spend and then correlates that with some output like revenue or users. There are sophisticated ways to come about this measurement end that can get very accurate, and having that measurement like buttoned up and done well is a huge differentiator for companies competitively. And then once you have that, you can be successful with offline advertising, which is honestly an arbitrage opportunity for lots of companies.
Talk about your favorite or one of your favorite direct mail campaigns. I love hearing about direct mail because it's often people are going to the sexy, we need to go advertise on whatever, Meta, Google, whatever. But the old school, and you've talked about this, I've heard you, the old school stuff, what's cool about it is you don't have to keep up with the platform. It
Yeah,
is what it is. Once you figure it out, you can scale it, right? And so I want to hear your favorite direct mail campaign.
definitely. Yeah, I always tell people when we're starting with direct mail that like think of the USPS as an ad network, right? Like it is the pipes that are serving the ads in the case of direct mail. And there is no innovation happening in that ad network. Like there's no technology being built. Like it's just static.
It's a
So what,
person at a mailbox putting
right? Like
something
it
in.
has worked the same way it's worked for the last 100 years, and it will probably work the same way for the next 100 years. So once it's complex, so once you understand that very basic ad network, like it becomes it can be very effective. And I have seen recently, I was very surprised. I was working with one of our companies called Traba, Traba, that does uh, sort of like skilled worker staffing. So if you run like a warehouse or like a facility and you need kind of temporary labor, industrial staffing, they will help you fill that gap. I was working on a direct mail campaign with them, and their target customer, there are thousands of these staffing agencies, and they are hit up constantly by them to the point that they just like ignore any traditional marketing that comes out of these firms. And so we had tried some traditional direct mail that I know works super well. Like Ramp finds phenomenal success with direct mail. We're scaling that up massively. We tried types of mail that I know
And
work.
Ramp, by the way, is kind of cool. I don't know if you want to just briefly say what Ramp does.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Ramp is a full expense management platform for businesses, all the way from, bill payments, receipt payments. We made a Super Bowl ad with Saquon Barkley where he was doing his expenses that ran that was really fun. But it's a full platform to run expense management and sort of financial management for businesses.
Yep.
Um, but back on Traba, so we ran that what I would call tried and true direct mail, failed miserably, like had no literally no responses. And they had sent and had this idea of what we call the invitation mailer. And it looked exactly like a wedding invitation, like a stamp with, the indicia like stamped out. It had like your invite, save the date on the outside. Like it was a full on, I'm getting invited to a wedding. And so it cut through the noise. And then on in the inside, it was written like a wedding invitation. It was like you're invited to essentially get a demo, and there was like an incentive of they would give you like chocolates, or there were different incentives that they would give you if you came to the demo. But the wording of it ultimately was the same call to action as the original direct mail piece, which is come get a demo of this product. But it was done in a way that so cut through the noise, and it worked incredibly well. And we're redoing that, and like I've never seen something that out of the box. I've told Ramp about this. I want Ramp to try this, but it worked super well.
What other interesting incentives you've seen? Either you've used with direct mail or you've gotten yourself. Like I remember, I mean, someone reached out to me, sent me something, and their incentive was, hey, I'll buy you lunch. We're virtual, but I'll DoorDash you lunch or whatever. And it wasn't even about the lunch, and I didn't even ask for it. It was just it for me. I'm like, this person's serious, right? And it wasn't about the lunch, but I'm curious some of the incentives you've seen, whether it worked or didn't work on
Yeah,
you
yeah,
personally or with one of the companies.
yeah. I'll never forget a company called Visual IQ, which was one of the very first ad attribution vendors trying to improve your understanding of channel performance. I think they were acquired. I forget what happened to them. This is a long time ago, but they sent me like a million candle watt flashlight that was like so powerful that like it would produce heat and like burn you if you like point at yourself. And they were like, illuminate the impact of your marketing with our tool. I didn't end up using it, but it's something I still remember to
But
this
you
day.
burned one of your enemies. You're
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it's like a
But
lightsaber.
yeah, it cut through the noise. What I'll say on incentives, because we've tested incentives. I've tested incentives in the past of like, if you book a demo, we'll give you AirPods or we'll give you $500 or something that seems like a very enticing incentive. And they honestly often don't work that well. And ultimately what it comes down to is like, do you have a product? This is back to like the ICP and the needs you're solving. Like if you have a product that's compelling and you're solving a need, like whether you make or break that sale is a $500 gift card, like that's not a differentiated business model. And so I always tell companies like, let your story shine through. Often shines through best in the voice of the customer. So showing customer testimonials, like real examples of where people have had pain points solved. People love stories of people. People love pictures of people in ads. If you lead with that, that is far more powerful as long as you're differentiated than an incentive in my experience.
I maybe want to talk about, I know you kind of go in, you picture like kind of ER and you triage. Maybe we could take one of the examples and some of the stuff that you saw early on and some of the stuff you helped with as well. I don't know if Try Profound would be a good example or Co-Frame and some of the ways you worked with the leadership.
Yeah, yeah. I'll use actually maybe character AI when I was at Andreessen, which is a very large AI chatbot. They were actually for a while they were the second fastest growing AI company behind OpenAI, and they had grown to second largest behind OpenAI. And I was working with them early on, and there were tons of like copycats that were like trying to siphon off traffic and trying to steal like all of their, brand traffic and all of the goodwill that they had built in the brand. There were lots of things we did to defend around that. But again, this comes back to like the differentiated value proposition. Like they had orders of magnitude better product than lots of their competitors. And so like while they were siphoning small amounts of traffic, like ultimately it didn't matter because their product was so much better. And so it's like, they're nipping at your heels, but they're not actually taking market share because you are like a demonstrably better product.
So like
That's
the focus was maybe not paying attention to the competition, just focusing on the product? Or because I remember like one of my favorite books is Wooden by John Wooden. If people don't know, he's one of the best college basketball, one of the best basketball coaches of all time, and won, I don't know, forgot how many, over 10 championships in a row, NCAA championships. And he talks about he wouldn't even, I mean, they just focused on the fundamentals and figured just get as best they can. So it reminds me of that.
it's funny you say focus on the fundamentals because there are lots of companies that come to me and they're like, what are the hacks? Like, what are the tricks and the growth hacks and the, all the little unknown things that we can do to kind of game the system? And I'm like, that the number one way that you're going to win is focusing on the fundamentals and building a repeatable growth motion and a repeatable growth engine. It's not through the hacks of like, remember, those dancing baby ads like back in the day, just trying to get people to click. Like that is not a durable, sustainable business model. And just building the fundamentals and accepting, there's a difference between like recklessly fast and like intelligent, like prudently fast, in my opinion. And it can appear slower when you're focusing on the fundamentals, but that is ultimately the way that I see lots of companies win. There are no hacks, there are no tricks to lots of this.
For you, what are some of those fundamentals? I remember in Wooden, he would make, it was crazy. I don't know if you've seen the book, but he would make his players, and we're talking like Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like some of the best basketball players of all times, and he would teach them to put their socks on and tie their shoes properly because he would say, if you get a blister, then you can't play.
Yeah,
And so those fundamentals could lead to, if you don't do them, lead to issues. So I'm curious on your end, what do you see as some of the fundamentals?
definitely. So I touched on a few. So there's the understanding your ICP. understanding what the core like KPIs are that are most important to the company and orienting around those and ruthlessly tracking those. The third one I often see companies don't understand is just like what their customers worth. And that involves if it's a subscription business,
Like a
like
lifetime value.
yeah, understand the lifetime value of that customer. What are our actual margins? Like if I'm selling a product, like what are we truly making? Like really understanding that kind of P&L or like CAC to LTV, I call it like a subscription business. And it sounds trivial, but I talk to many companies and I'm like, what is your CAC goal? Or like what's an LTV of a customer? And they don't know. Like they don't have an
Hmm.
idea even within orders of magnitude. And customer value varies so much by channel and by like where they came from that you not only need to understand like overall what that LTV or customer value is, but like how does it vary by if you're international, by geo, by customer segment, by what channel they came to, all of those different dimensions, because that is like the number one input into allocation of resources, whether it's budget in marketing channels, whether it's headcount with people, like that is the North Star of how you want to allocate resources in like an ROI focused fashion. And lots of companies don't do that well.
Yeah, I mean, I love watching Shark Tank, and you can tell who comes in prepared, and they're like, "What's your customer acquisition cost?" And then per channel, right? So as you said, well, and on Facebook or Meta, it's this. On Google, it's this, and there may be different lifetime values of a customer. Like I know if someone goes to a conference, it may be a higher value customer than if they got someone off a cold, Google ad or something like that. So
Totally, totally.
yeah,
And
no.
one last thought on that, like one of the biggest challenges within a company in asking them that is you're often asking like the channel owners, and they are obviously incentivized that like their channel is working and don't want to say if it's not, right? And so you need some
Yeah. Yeah, you have the team,
overarching.
like the team that's running meta ads, and I like we're sucking right
They're not going to
now.
be like Meta sucks, like
Yeah.
it's going to be Meta's amazing, and you'll get the same feeling from the events person. But you need somebody across all of that, kind of like playing, referee.
Brett, first of all, I just want to be the first one to thank you. I mean, thanks for sharing your lesson, your journey, your knowledge. It's amazing kind of the insights you have across all the companies you've worked at, and also the we work inside with what you do for a living. You work inside a lot of companies, so it's really cool. So I want to point people to khoslaventures.com. You've been seeing it on the page. It's Khosla ventures.com. Are there any other places we should point people online that we haven't talked about?
Um, I'm sure everybody in the growth community knows, but like Lenny's newsletter is a fantastic resource for, product growth, like all things kind of related to scaling companies. Yeah, that's another good resource.
All right. I mean, I guess I'll ask like any other favorite podcasts that you have,
Um,
because
I
Lionel
really
Lenny's has a podcast also.
I listen to More or Less a lot, which is I don't know if you know The Information. It's a kind of a tech focused publication. Uh, Jessica Lesson runs that, and they have a podcast called More or Less. It's kind of all about tech news. I really love that. Listen to it every Monday as I drive into the office.
Yeah, and any other cool companies we should mention? I do want to mention Ravenna.ai. You turned me on to to their company, and so I watched an interview with them. They're kind of the next gen AI built on top of Slack. Right now, I mean, they help a lot of use cases, but specifically people with bigger IT teams. I'll pull that up to show people. Any other, I don't know,
Yeah,
companies that we should mention?
company I love working with is Credit Genie. They check all the boxes of just like fantastic team, amazing product market fit. They solve a real pain point. They're growing like crazy. Yeah, I really enjoy them. Credit Genie is called.
I'm gonna have to pull that up here too. This is it.
Yes, exactly. you can sort of think of it as a rocket money. But they're again, they just check all those boxes of that makes, differentiates between good and great companies.
Love it. Brett, I want to be the first one to thank you. Check out khoslaventures.com, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Brett.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.